Hey, what's going on, guys? The other day, Colby Covington did an interview with Submissive Radio. This guy does more interviews than actual fights. And he discussed a litany of things. He discussed Machado Garry versus MVP. He discussed what's next for him. He discussed Hamzat Chimaev. And in this interview, he embarrassed himself, begging and pleading, calling out Charles Oliveira and other lightweights. And we're going to break down this interview. I've been requested multiple times, Joey, please do a video on Colby Covington's interview. You guys are forcing me to suffer through interview after interview. But we're going to break it down today. And we're also going to expose MMA media. And I have nothing personal against these guys, or apparently one of them left or is temporarily gone or something along those lines. I have nothing against these guys. But I have to point out what goes on with a lot of the MMA media in terms of interviews that some of you guys may know, but some of you guys may not know. So we're also going to expose that in this interview as well. And also, I left a couple clips in here we're going to look at where Colby Covington actually said a couple things. It's probably 45 seconds straight. I agreed with every single word out of Colby Covington's mouth. So we're going to take a look at that in this video as well. We're going to start off with the very beginning of the Submissive Radio interview because it just shows how submissive they are. It's really just quite frankly embarrassing, and it got more embarrassing as the interview went on. I'm actually going to skip ahead after this clip and show you an even more embarrassing clip. But I'm so sick and tired of the landscape of MMA media. And I've talked about this for a long time, and this was one of the inspirations for my channel. But a lot of these interviewers are so desperate for the access to fighters, they just suck them off nonstop. They never say anything or ask any difficult questions. And I understand. I'm not asking them to change. I understand that's what they have to do to make money. But it drives me nuts, and it's not good for actual fans. So I just want you to look at this intro. I mean, geez, I mean, literally, can you get him out of your throat? I mean, speaking of throats, we're going to talk about throats in a second. There's an insult that he throws out about Gary's wife, insulting others' wives. We're going to take a look at. But just listen to this intro. I mean, can you suck him off anymore?
All right, guys, our next guest has been one of the best welterweights in the world for just about a decade in the UFC. He's a former UFC interim champion, NCAA Division I All-American in wrestling, and most importantly, he is the king of Miami, the one and only Colby Covington. Welcome back to Submission Radio, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, brother. It's great to be back on Submission Radio. You know, this is my favorite and only place that I talk to for MMA media because you guys are unbiased.
So there you go. That explains why certain fighters only go certain places to do interviews. They want to be placated like Submissive Radio was placating Colby Covington and pushing certain narratives and asking certain layup questions. And I understand they all do it. I just want to point this out because I suffered through this entire interview. I need to show you guys that. And then we're going to skip ahead. We're going to go a little bit out of order. This one's even more embarrassing. This one is so embarrassing that I literally started laughing out loud. I left a question in here. I literally started cackling out loud. I'm not gonna give you a spoiler. I'm just going to play it for you. I'm going to let you guys hear it with your own ears for the first time. This is a question that this guy, I forgot what his name is. This is the questions that are being asked in a Colby Covington interview on Submissive Radio. By the way, if you guys want to go support him, I'll link the full interview down in the description for you to go check out. Listen to this.
I'm still quickly as well. I saw Nick Diaz is coming back in August. He's fighting Vicente Luque. I wonder, like, why wasn't he someone that was offered to you? Was he offered to you? It seems like the perfect sort of return fight with a good timeline.
Did you guys hear what he just said? Did you guys hear? Let me rewind this. Did you guys hear what this man just said?
I'm still quickly as well. I saw Nick Diaz is coming back in August. He's fighting Vicente Luque. I wonder, like, why wasn't he someone that was offered to you? Was he offered to you? It seems like the perfect sort of return fight with a good timeline.
He wants Colby to fight the dead carcass of Nick Diaz? What are you, his husband? Are you his brother? Who would ever want to see that? Who would ever want to see that? We'll listen to a little bit of Colby's response here.
Unfortunately, he hasn't been offered to me in about 3 years. The last time Hunter had called me with Nick Diaz's name across my desk was when they offered me to him in Madison Square Garden.
So there you go. Unfortunately, he wasn't offered to me. Yeah, because that's the type of fights Colby wants. That's why I wanted to show you his reaction. Could you imagine if Colby came back against Nick Diaz? What an embarrassment that would be. Colby goes on to say, like, yeah, that would be a massive mismatch, which it would be. But yeah, Colby would love that fight. I'm going to show you one more clip about Nick Diaz because Colby starts bragging about the fact that apparently Nick Diaz ducked him. And I know this is a bit kind of random here, but I just got to show you what an embarrassment this guy is. People are like, Joey, you don't like Colby because his political affiliations. Joey, you don't like Colby. You said he's ducking Gary, and you said the Gary fight isn't going to happen at 303 because of his political affiliations. I don't know how anyone in the MMA community can co-sign this. Dude's saying, yeah, Nick Diaz doesn't want to fight me. He said I'm too much of a dog for him. And I get he's playing a character, but at this point, his character is who he is. This is who he puts out. This is his public persona. And we have to criticize. We can't say, oh, well, he's just playing a character. He's literally saying Nick Diaz ducked me and is scared of me. I mean, what? It just shows where Colby's confidence level's at. That's why he would not take on Ian Machado Garry.
He ended up taking the Robbie Lawler fight instead because he's like, no, I don't want to fight Colby. He's too much of a dog. He's too hungry. That guy's, he knew at that time that I was the best welterweight on earth. He came up to me one time when I fight after UFC Sacramento, and he's like, yeah, you're the future of this division.
Does anyone believe that Nick Diaz said, no, Colby's too much of a dog, and came up to Colby and said, yeah, Colby, you're the future of the division? That doesn't even sound like something Nick Diaz would ever even utter, ever, to anyone.
Showed me a lot of respect. So, I'm not going to put down the Diaz brothers and talk shit about them. They've said some things about me, but
I'm not going to put down the Diaz brothers and talk shit about them, but let me talk shit about them right now.
They've done great things in this sport, and, I'm not going to say sit down and say anything bad about him, but, he did dodge the fight. He was scared to fight me, and that's facts. That's truth. Everything I say is facts and truth, and it is what it is. I'm still going to go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer and have a great legacy with or without Nick Diaz.
This dude said, I'm going to go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer. Keep in mind, Colby's biggest accomplishment in his entire career is losing to Kamaru Usman and won via stoppage. And let's listen to this guy. I wish I could remember his name. Let's listen to this guy's response because it just shows the embarrassing state of MMA media and MMA interviewers in general.
Yeah, man, you're in there for sure. Wow, that would have been a crazy fight. All right, we'll see what happens in August. Maybe they'll come together down the track.
He's hoping for this guy's hoping for a future Colby Nick Diaz rematch. This is how badly he wants Colby to win because Colby's only getting like 30, 40, 50, 60K views now on interviews. That's how irrelevant that Colby Covington is now. So this guy's hoping that he fights Nick Diaz and beats up the dead carcass of Nick Diaz so he can get some more views on his channel. Okay, now let's get into the heart of the interview now. Okay, he's asked about Ian Machado Garry and what did he think of the fight, basically. Let's listen to his answer.
Fighting cans from the Indian casino leagues. Oh, big deal. Anybody could be 15-0 fighting a bunch of 15 bums, So even Dana White himself, said what he thought of the performance. He thought it was a draw. He didn't think there should have been a winner. I feel bad for the fans. The fans got robbed of, a pay-per-view opener. That's supposed to be the opener pay-per-view. So that was pathetic. That guy's fighting the number 14 guy in the world and barely scraping by. I think.
Keep in mind, so he's saying Gary fought the number 14 guy in the world and he's barely scraping by. Colby Covington does not have a win on his resume against a fighter who is currently in the top 15 of the welterweight rankings. His last couple of wins are all guys who were close to 40 on losing streaks when he defeated them. He has not won a single fight since March of 2022. I had to actually think about it. It's been 2 years since this guy's won a fight. The majority of his wins are no longer even in the UFC. They're retired. So to talk about, yeah, he's struggling against number 12. Colby, you're hiding behind your ranking. Why is he even still ranked so high? But let's carry on and listen to a little bit more. And by the way, Colby said, I thought Gary lost. So we're going to call him out for the utter hypocrisy that he utters here in a little bit.
I think he lost the fight. So,
Oh, apparently he hadn't said it yet. But yeah, there you heard him say, I'm just going to rewind it real quick. He thought Gary lost, by the way, which is just a ridiculous statement, by the way. If anyone thought that Gary lost, they're crazy.
That guy's fighting the number 14 guy in the world and barely scraping by. I think he lost the fight. So, I feel bad for the fans. They got robbed, but it just shows how much of a bum he is. Like, oh, yeah, I want to be on a Conor McGregor card. He was willing to do whatever he want to be on the Conor McGregor card because
Conor McGregor card. Look, I know everyone stumbles over their words here and there. It has to get better with his cue cards, okay? Has to get better with his cue cards. But I just find it hilarious. He's shitting on Gary's performance, which I agree it wasn't the best performance ever, and saying how pathetic it was and saying he barely scraped by the number 12 guy. At least he's active and taking fights. And by the way, Ian Machado Garry's performance against MVP looked like Yuri Prohaska versus Glover Teixeira compared to Colby Covington's performance against Leon Edwards, where he sat out for 2 years in witness protection, came back to Dana White privilege in a title shot, and then absolutely refused to fight in the main event. Talk about feeling sorry for fans. I feel sorry for the fans who were there at UFC 296 back in December of last year. That is the fans that I feel sorry for. So this guy's just a massive hypocrite. Now, this next clip is a clip that everyone's talking about. It's been circulating around. Oh, he insulted Gary's wife. It's so funny. It's so hilarious. So I figured I'd include it in the video because this guy's a scumbag. All he does is talk about people's families because nobody actually cares about him. No, he's irrelevant now. The reason he came out and did this interview is so he could latch his name onto Gary's name. That's the reason why. So it's just an embarrassment. And here he is talking about Gary and Gary's wife. Listen to this.
I guess that shows us what UFC thinks about the guy, that the guy's absolute nobody and he's a bum and he has no reason to talk about anything. He keeps talking about this GOAT stuff. The only GOAT that he has is his wife. She's the throat GOAT, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that was so good. People thought that was so hilarious. Oh, he says his wife is really good at sucking dick. Oh my God, it's so funny. What are we, 12 years old? And by the way, this guy starts laughing hysterically. Oh my God, it's really funny to listen to Colby insult another man's wife. Disgusting, disgraceful, total piece of shit, especially considering he's talking and then hiding. I hear a lot of people say, Joey, you sit behind a computer, you sit behind a microphone, and you talk about these fighters and these athletes that get into the cage, which isn't really true. I'm not talking to them or I'm not trying to get their attention. This guy is a clown who is an active fighter in the UFC. A guy wants to fight him. He's talking shit about him and his family, and he outright refuses to fight Gary. And let's just listen to this guy chuckle up a storm because apparently we're 12-year-olds, okay?
What did you think of MVP's performance?
Yeah. And then he asked him, what do you think of MVP's performance? And then we're going to go back to the comment. Remember, he thought Gary lost. He watched the fight and thought Gary lost. So now he's asked, what did you think of MVP's performance?
Man, because obviously he's a guy that's a little later in his career. He's having a crack at the UFC, but there were moments on the ground.
Let's just skip ahead a little bit. Let's just skip ahead into Colby's answer here. He's asked, what do you think about MVP's performance?
You think I would spend a Saturday night watching two jobbers fight on pay-per-view? I got better things to do with my life, brother. I'm a multi-million-dollar star athlete. I got to go out there and enjoy my life on a Saturday night. I wasn't watching fights, let alone two bums in my division that could care less about. They're fighting for what? For the gatekeeper of the top 15? These guys are nobodies. I've beaten world champion after world champion for 7 years straight. My resume, 7 main events in a row.
His resume speaks for itself. Nothing but 40-year-olds on losing streaks. So, and also, he didn't watch the fight. He just said he thought Gary lost literally 1 second ago. This guy couldn't say, well, you just said you thought Gary lost. Well, where did you have that? Where did you conceive that opinion from? And I know people are going to Joe, he's just playing a character. No, this guy's a clown, and some of the fan base gets behind this. This is an embarrassment. This is a complete embarrassment. It gets even worse. He starts talking about Hamzat. He starts desperately begging for lightweight fights and calling out Charles Oliveira. Let's get to the part about Hamzat Chimaev. Let's move along to the part about Hamzat Chimaev. Listen to this. He's actually talking about Dana White was asked at the post-fight presser, Why didn't you make Ian Garry versus Colby Covington? Did Colby turn down the fight? That's what Garry said. And Dana said, oh, no, Colby doesn't turn down fights, which a lot of people have pointed out to me. But we all know that's not true. Dana White is just covering for a fellow Donald Trump sycophant. So listen to this.
No, you heard what Dana said. You know, the fine print. Dana said Colby's never rejected one fight. I accept every single fight that's ever came across my desk. You know, I fought the pound for pound best fighter twice and beat him twice, in my opinion. You know, I fought this last guy, the number 4 pound for pound fighter, and I thought I should have won the fight on a broken foot in the first 30 seconds compromise. So
he thought he beat Leon Edwards.
You know, I accepted every fight. Just like he said, I've never rejected a fight. So what happened to Khamzat? Khamzat was saying the same thing. Oh, Colby doesn't want to fight. What happened to Khamzat? Oh, yeah, he retired because of the common cold. The guy's an absolute clown. He's lucky he can't get in the USA because America's champ would absolutely decimate him and take his soul. So
listen, if anyone's buying this, I'm not going to pull up all the receipts here. If anyone's actually buying this, you're dumber than you think, okay? You are a complete idiot if you're actually buying that Colby doesn't turn down fights. Let's go through it real quick, just off memory. He turned down Tyron Woodley because he had a deviated septum and he was stripped of the interim welterweight title, okay? Then he turned down Leon Edwards in, I believe it was March of 2021 or March of 2020, because I believe it was March of 2021. And the reason I say he turned him down is because Leon Edwards says, yeah, I'm fighting Colby Covington. Dana White said, yeah, that's the fight that's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, Colby's radio silent, and then the fight doesn't happen. We end up getting Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. Then Hamzat Chimaev is calling out Colby Covington nonstop, every single day, all day. And I understand Hamzat's called out a lot of people. Then Dana White comes out and says, yeah, we want to make Hamzat Chimaev versus Colby Covington. Colby's radio silence, doesn't say a single word. The fight ultimately never happens. I mean, it's example after example. Gary's calling Colby out. Colby publicly ducked Garry. It wasn't even behind the scenes. You don't have to look further than Colby Covington himself, who was talking all this shit, saying he's willing to step in for UFC 303 if Conor or Chandler gets hurt. And then Garry saying that's the fight. The fans all want the fight. And then it doesn't happen. It's very, very clear he put out those stipulations so that he did not have to fight Garry. So he's ducked fight after fight after fight. If you aren't close to 40 years old and you aren't on a losing streak, then Colby Covington flat out will not fight you. And I believe that's going to happen next. I believe that Colby is going to beg and plead, and I think the UFC is going to give him some more of that Dana White privilege, and he's going to probably fight Wonderboy Thompson in his next fight. But we'll see. But there's a reason, because Colby Covington does not believe in himself. He'll only take a tough fight when it's an undeserved title shot in hopes that he can fluke a win. His biggest accomplishment is losing to Kamaru Usman twice. This guy ducks fight after fight after fight. And one of these days it's going to get old with Dana White in the UFC. One of these days it's going to get old. And Dana in the past has kind of thrown him under the bus a little bit here and there and say he's an idiot and say he's a loudmouth and this and that. We're not going to go through all that in this video. But it's going to get old at some point. I think it's already wearing old with a lot of fans. But anyone that believes that Colby isn't ducking fight after fight after fight, they're not living in reality. Next clip. We're going to move ahead and we're going to look at him talking about none other than just a walk-on boy from Missouri. I believe it's Missouri. A walk-on guy from Missouri, Michael Chandler. And this is where I actually agree with pretty much every word that Colby Covington says. So I was like, you know what? I criticize Colby. I call him out when he's a clown. Let me praise him when he's actually accurate in some of the statements that he makes. So he's talking about Chandler here, and then he goes on in a little bit to actually basically call out Michael Chandler after kind of prompt it with a question. Listen to this.
Never came across their desk. I think they had Pereira and Prochaska in place in case that fell through, and that's what happened. And as we see with fucking that little midget Mike Chandler, he's still waiting in the T-Mobile for Conor to show up. He's still there in Vegas right now in the T-Mobile thinking Conor's going to come out there and fight him. So it's pretty hilarious. That little midget's an absolute nobody. Nobody cares about him. Conor doesn't care about him. The fans don't care about him. So, he needs to move on with his.
I don't agree with every word. Fans definitely do care, but they're starting to care less and less. But he's saying Chandler needs to move on.
With his business. It's pretty sad. He looks like a fucking desperate little bum right there, just begging, oh, Conor, please, Conor, come change my life. I'm a fucking little short bum, and I'm irrelevant. I'm like 1-4 in the UFC. So please just come give me some merit. Come give me some, a high-level fight. It's pretty pathetic what Chandler's done with his career. But it just shows how much of a bum he is. And absolute nobody.
So I don't think Chandler's a nobody. I don't think Chandler's a bum. So I do disagree with some of that. But the main point he's making is Chandler is wasting his career for Conor McGregor, who's probably never going to fight him, which I agree with 100%. And he talks about it a little bit more here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Talks a little bit more about Chandler here and kind of starts to call him out a little bit here, I believe.
What I've done, and just like I predicted on Fox News with Laura Ingraham, I said, Mike, this fight's never going to happen. You still think you're going to fight Conor McGregor, so it's never going to happen. What's he been waiting, like 2.5 years now? Just completely wasted his whole career thinking that Conor's going to come back and fight him. Conor's never fighting again. I said this from the start.
There you go. I agree with Colby. Conor's most likely never fighting again, probably not in the UFC. We'll see. Maybe it does happen. I don't think he's fighting Chandler if he does come back. I think the UFC will find a way to get like a Nate Diaz fight or something along those lines if they re-sign Conor to a long-term deal. But I agree with Colby here. Now, I think it is the next clip. The next clip, he kind of starts calling out Chandler, which is hilarious because he's saying Chandler's a bum. He's saying Chandler's irrelevant. But guess what? Colby perceives Chandler as an easy fight. A blown-up lightweight who doesn't even have really any good wins in the UFC, who has, 2 years off, coming off a loss against Dustin Poirier and, is mentally broken and weak. And Colby perceives Michael Chandler as a big fight, but a winnable fight for him. So, of course, he wants that fight. He's begging for every lightweight fight under the sun. He begs for Charles Oliveira here in a second as well.
I would love to. It's an easy fight, the little short.
So he says it out loud. It's an easy fight. I would love that fight because it's an easy fight. He doesn't want Gary because it's, he'll never mention Gary. He'll never mention Shavkat or try to make those fights actually happen because he knows he'll lose those matchups.
Pipsqueak's going to get fucking knocked out cold, He's ran his mouth before, too, saying, I'm bulking up now to 70. I'd like to fight Colby after I fight Conor. So let's see if he's a man of his word. All these little fucking midgets that cut all this weight to get to 55 because they're scared to fight at a real man's division at 170. They all run their mouth, but they never come through and back up their words. So
dude desperately wants a lightweight fight. He desperately wants a lightweight to come up and fight him. And by the way, this is another narrative that Colby pushes and a lot of his fans push, which is fans are, abandoning ship left and right. Colby acts like he's such a small welterweight that he should be fighting at lightweight, and he's fighting at his natural weight class at 170. It's just simply not true. He's not the biggest welterweight, but he's not a small welterweight by any means. He's just using that so he can elevate kind of what he's been able to achieve in the welterweight division. I don't even think he could go down to lightweight, to be quite honest. That's why he hasn't. He would never go down to lightweight because he can't make lightweight most likely, but he's begging for some of the lightweights to come up and fight him so he can fight smaller guys. That's genuinely what he wants. And he goes on a little bit more here about fighting Chandler some more. It's just embarrassing. And in a second, he's going to start trying to kind of coax and beg and plead with a pathetic call out of Charles Oliveira.
The UFC knows Colby Covington wants to do big business. And if Michael Chandler deems necessary to the UFC, Colby Covington's coming out to fight Michael Chandler.
Look how desperately he wants this fight. Shit-eating grin. And if Chandler deems necessary to the UFC, what does that even mean? Is that even English? I'm not even sure about that sentence structure. Doesn't make any sense at all. But look at him. He wants Chandler. Never Ian Machado Garry, which would have been a bigger fight. Imagine Colby versus Garry. Imagine Colby versus Chimaev. I know Chimaev's at middleweight now. But you notice Colby was always radio silent about Hamzat Chimaev when Hamzat was in the division begging for the Colby fight, right? And then the second Hamzat's gone or sick or in another weight class, that's when he starts running his mouth. I mean, it's so painfully obvious. But imagine Colby versus Garry would be huge. Colby versus Hamzat would be huge. Colby versus Shavkat would be huge. You'll never hear those names come out of his mouth. He went to the UFC 296 post-fight presser and begged for Wonderboy Thompson. That's what he begged for and said, yeah, Wonderboy's been talking a lot of shit. And then next up, and again, just begging for lightweights. He's begging and pleading for a Charles Oliveira fight. Listen to this. I mean, this is a complete and utter humiliation in my opinion.
Still a potential fight. The UFC hasn't shown much interest with it, but if you look at the landscape and what he said in his recent interview that he wants to go up a weight, to 170, he's a big guy. He's taller than me. He weighs more than me. The guy's just a weight bully cutting to 155 because he wants to be stronger in there because he doesn't have a mental edge. He's mentally weak, so he needs to have a physical edge. He needs to be the bigger guy in the fight to feel confident going into a fight. So, another one of those guys with baseless words, said all these things. Oh, yeah, I want big legacy fights. I want to go up to 170. Well, here's your chance, Charles Oliveira. I'm the biggest fight you can get.
By the way, Colby's like, I'm the biggest fight you can get. Colby wants Oliveira because Charles Oliveira is a far bigger draw than Colby Covington. And I'll put it up on the screen if I can find it. But back in 2022, Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje far outdrew UFC 272, which was Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. Keep in mind, Jorge Masvidal is a bigger star than Colby. They outdrew him in pay-per-view buys. That's a legit reporting from a legit website. I think it's the Las Vegas Review Journal. If I'm not, don't quote me on that, but I'll put it on the screen. UFC 274 drew 400,000 buys, and it was the best-selling pay-per-view of the year from a credible source. Therefore, that means that UFC 272 did under 400,000 buys. Probably did about 300,000 buys if I had to guess, but that's pure speculation. He wants to fight Charles Oliveira because Charles Oliveira is a bigger star than him, and he's always trying to latch his name onto other stars. Colby's always been the B-side. Jorge Masvidal, bigger draw. Kamaru Usman, bigger draw. Now, Leon Edwards, not a bigger draw. Okay, in that case, he was the kind of drawing force to that pay-per-view. But that's why he so desperately wants the Charles Oliveira fight. Plus, he's seen Charles Oliveira get out-grappled by Islam Makhachev, get out-grappled by Arman Tsarukyan in the last fight. He thinks he can win that fight. He thinks, oh, I can take him down and hold him down. Now, of course, he has to avoid the submission and whatnot, but that's why he wants the Charles Oliveira fight, because he knows it'll actually do decent numbers for him, because he's not an actual draw.
Former world champion, the king of Brazil, the king of Miami, Donald Trump's favorite fighter. What's going to be bigger for your legacy, Charles, than coming and fighting me, America's champion, Donald Trump's favorite fighter? You want the biggest fight. The ball's in your court, Charles.
Look at him. He's literally doing a sales pitch. Please, Charles, come. He looks like Chandler talking about Conor McGregor. I'm the biggest fight in the division. I'm a legacy fight. Come on, Charles. The ball's in your court. I mean, what an embarrassment. He won't dare to say Shavkat. He would never dare mention Shavkat. He would never dare mention Hamzat. He would never dare ask for the Garry fight. He'll never dare ask for JDM. Would never happen in a million years because he's scared. His confidence is in the dumps. So he sees Charles Oliveira as a fight that he can win against a smaller guy who draws more pay-per-views than he does. That's what he wants. And he continues to beg for it. Listen to this.
Let's see if you're a man of your word. You talked a big game saying you want to come up to 170. There's nothing left for you at 155. All these other guys they're trying to match you up with are complete nobodies. The biggest and best fight for Charles Oliveira's legacy would be Colby Covington. So let's see if he's about that life. But I don't think he is. I think he's gonna run away because he knows what would happen.
Look at him trying to use reverse psychology. Charles Oliveira needs to stay in the lightweight division. I don't think he's coming up. This is just vintage Colby. Begging for the Dustin Poirier fight. Talking about the Chandler fight. Dude's calling out nothing but lightweights. Bilal asked for the fight. He didn't want that fight. Bilal asked for the fight. I want to say back when Bilal fought Gilbert Burns. I want to say, don't quote me on that. I'm trying to remember on the fly here. But yeah, Colby doesn't want any of these top welterweights unless it's an undeserved title shot. So now he's begging. He's calling out every lightweight in the top 5. Well, Chandler's not in the top 5 anymore because he's been sitting on the sidelines for 2 years, but you get the point. And this last clip I want to show you just shows that he actively ducked Garry. I want you to look at the smirk on his face. He specifically turned down Garry and sat out and pretended he was injured. I don't believe that he ever had a broken foot. But he's asked, when are you planning on returning, Colby? And just watch his answer and then watch the smirk on his face because he knows he wasn't actually injured. He's full of shit.
Yeah, Colby Covington feels very, very good now. He's almost back to 100%. He's been putting in a lot.
So listen to that. Isn't it awfully funny? Garry fights, and now Colby's feeling 100%. Now Colby's feeling good. And by the way, let me actually just rewind this a couple seconds. He did this a couple times throughout the interview. This man is talking about himself in third person. What a clown.
Yeah, Colby Covington feels very, very good now. He's almost back to 100%. He's been putting in a lot of rehab. Colby Covington is very diligent in the way he approaches his recovery and his rehab. And, he's been doing all the right things to get my foot and my calf and my ankle back to strength and, so I can kick again and have no, bearings on me going forward. I want to go out there at 100% and give the fans what they deserve.
Yeah, because he put on a disgraceful performance at UFC 296. This guy's a joke. He was never injured. He made up that lie to excuse away his shit performance at UFC 296. And I cannot wait till someone like Colby washes out of the UFC. But in my opinion, most likely the UFC is going to give him a layup in like a Wonderboy Thompson or maybe even MVP, who he can easily out-grapple, who's almost 40 years old, who's probably on a losing streak. They're going to give him that fight around September, October. so that Colby can get a win and then get on the mic, and they'll probably have Trump there, and he'll be pushing Trump because that is the only way that Colby has fans. He latches on to somebody who's more popular. He latches on to somebody else who has a bigger name. And that's the way Colby gets interest from fans into himself, because he's not exciting. He just says ridiculous stuff on the mic. What a complete and utter joke. This interview was a complete and utter humiliation for him, as well as the guy interviewing him, and Submissive Radio as a whole. But if you care to check it out in its entirety, feel free. It'll be linked down in the description. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Share the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.